Danny Boy has the innate ability to lay right where I'm trying to work. Almost like he knows what's going on. What are you doing there, Danny? You're going to have to move, Danny. Daddy's got to work, Danny. Morning, everybody. My name's Bill. This is Pirate Solutions Forestry. Hope you guys all had a terrific Labor Day weekend. And we're back at it bright and early on Tuesday morning. We did work pretty much all weekend. I took a little bit of time off on Saturday to watch some college football, but I went at it pretty hard Saturday morning. And I think some of you guys, if you watch videos, you saw the slabs that we cut yesterday for Thatcher Smith at Plymouth Live Edge. We have to go run those up there this week. I'm contemplating doing that a little differently. Starting to get worried about my tailgate. My truck's getting beat. It's almost time for a replacement, and kind of like that Stella Cut band on the sawmill that's at the end of its life, my truck's getting there. Unfortunately, it served me very well, so it's a tough decision. But I've got an exhaust manifold leak, and that's going to cause a problem with me getting it inspected in December. And I don't know if I want to dump the money into it to do it, and I really hate to do it myself because it's just such a pain. But that's kind of what's going on. What we're going to do today is, I've been telling you guys we were going to bang together some slab rack. And we are going to do that today. So I can get that off my plate, and it's going to get a couple of 6x6s off the racks over here. A few 4x4s out of the rack, and some other junk that I have lying around. And the purpose of the slab rack is to take my slab wood, load it into the slab rack, and then have a place to be able to bucket down into, let's just say, any length. But for me, primarily 16-inch firewood chunks that I can then run through the splitter or bundle them and market them as just firewood chunks for maybe people with outdoor boilers and stuff like that. I have my cousin Bobby has a big farm up in Middleborough, say 30 minutes north of here, and he runs an outdoor boiler, and I'm considering asking him if he wants some. And, let's just say he wants 4-footers, and then cutting him a whole bunch of 4-footers and running them up to him just to get him out of here. But it's going to give me a way to process through a bunch of my slab wood while I'm waiting for, say, some of my tree guy friends to be running home half empty one night, come by with a chipper so we can run some of it through a chipper. And possibly another avenue to market some of it for sale. I don't have, I'd give it away. I don't really have an idea of what it's worth. I'm going to put some feelers out when I start cutting it up. And I think the way that I'm going to go about it is we're going to put 2 6x6 runners on the bottom that if you did bump into them, you make a mark on them, but you wouldn't ever cut through them. We're going to put runners on the bottom so it can be picked up and moved around. It's going to be basically at ground level, so I don't have to, if I'm lifting slabs off the mill or something and throwing them in there, then I don't have to lift them very high. And I'm going to put 4x4s across the top at intervals so that I can cut in between the 4x4s, which will give me 4 inches of space before the chainsaw bar will smash into the 6x6s. I'm going to make it 41 inches deep, and that just makes sure that you don't have to be perfect with pallet forks, but you can get all the way underneath both sides. And also my 42-inch Oregon bar that I primarily use for milling. I have crosscut chains for it too, for falling. I'll be able to put a crosscut chain on that saw because it doesn't get used much for milling right now. and we'll be able to cut the whole bundle at one time, just go down the bundle. And the kind of the premise of slab wood rack is to support the slabs completely so that you don't have any pinching. You know, I primarily just go through the pile. Do I keep saying primarily this morning? I don't know. How many times have I said it? I'm going to have to look at the video. But I normally go through the pile and just cut it up right in the pile and run it right through the splitter, but this is going to give me a different way to do it. And I kind of foresee eating up some of my piles around my splitter and having it live back there so that I can load it, cut the 16 inches, have them close to the splitter so I'm not offloading it into the bucket and then going back and dumping it by the splitter. It kind of saved me a step there, but that area is too congested right now for that. I'll have to work through my firewood area to make it so it can sit back there. And then if we want to move it, we can always just move it out here. So if we're cutting a bunch of logs one day, we can either offload onto the Bobcat and then dump it into the thing, or we could bring the thing right out here and set it near the mill and offload right into it. So that's what we're going to get up to, and I am going to, as Dirt Perfect would say, hammer down, move some stuff around, get myself a lumber bunk out here to work on top of, and get all my components out. Probably just cut them up with the chainsaw, timber lock the whole thing together, and take you through the process. Not super complicated. You really can't mess it up. The only thing that you could do really to mess it up is build it so your forks don't go all the way through, or make it so that, you know, when you cut through, you're cutting through whatever's holding it together. So, or that you can hit screws. But I think I've got it figured out in my head, and let's get at it. So the first thing that I did was I cut these two off, or I cut the one off at the same length. So we have two full dimension 6x6s here. If you remember back, these are the ones that we cut out of, it was like a center pith video and something else. They're kind of buggy and wormy. I wouldn't want to send these out to a customer. I had just planned on using them around here for something that I would build, and this is going to be the thing. So I have them facing bottom up right now. And we're going to cut a bunch of 41-inch runners to go on the bottom. Now, I don't know if you guys can see around me here, but I've got a lot of junk and offcuts and stuff. These are two pieces of oak, and they're both two inches thick. They'll be perfect runners for the bottom. And I'm going to lay out whatever we end up with for good 41-inch material. We'll lay them out on here. I'll lay out the centers on both. We'll put one right in the middle, and then we'll lay out the rest of them, and we'll get them screwed down. Probably put a 4-inch screw through them to hold them in place, make sure it's kind of square, which it doesn't need to be. And then we will throw a timber lock in each one just to make sure that they don't pull out, and to keep these kind of rigidly secured. Now, when we secure the 4x4s down to the top, it's really going to stiffen the structure up, but these will last a long time, and they're just junk laying around in the ground. Typically, I cut these things up for little runners sitting on my lumber bunks so I can just come over and put stuff down. Let's get them cut up. All right, so we're going to get these 41 inches apart to the outside. They're kind of lined up on the end here. Just close. They don't have to be perfect. We'll use the boards to make them perfect. All right, and we'll take a measurement on this one, mark the center. So it's 128, so 64. Always a good idea, double check your math so you don't make a dumb mistake. That's right. We'll take 64 from our cut end here. And we'll put 2 on the ends, 1 in the middle, then split the difference, which is going to be 32. It's kind of wet wood, so I'll mark it with a Sharpie. So 32 is the center here. 32. It's not the exact center because the board over here is going to be inside that mark, but it doesn't really matter. 32. When I have an uneven end, I always measure from the short point. 32. And these are all about, well, they're all different widths, so we'll go ahead and get these laid out on here. Let's see. Got a piece of pine going in the middle. This one is 4 inches wide. So we'll come over 2 inches from the center. Make a mark. Same thing over here. Make a mark. That's 2, yep. And then we'll have to see on those other ones how wide they are. I want it to secure solidly, so I will use really my flattest edge against the boards and leave the uneven edge going on the ground. I also want to get it somewhat square. This doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to adjust it later. All right, leave it there. I'm going to go ahead and just zip this in right now just to kind of hold things in place. Need a bit. My tool belt has every bit on the face of the planet in it, and that's both a blessing and a curse. There's always crap in my way. Just want to flush it to the outside. Put it on my line. I'm going to put 1 screw in each so it can be adjusted for square. And we'll bang down the ends. my more square side to the outside so that I can measure for square. Basic square on it right now before I put these other ones in, because they're just going to add resistance. Let's just see how basically square we are. So I got 134 and 3/8. This thing's going to be right on my impact gun, isn't it? Yeah, 134 and 5/8. So this needs to go that way just a hair. Check it again. Should be about 134 and a half. Should be about right, I think. 134 and a half. Oh. 134 and a half. It's exactly square right now. Now we can fasten the rest of the runners on the base. These ones are, they're 3 and a hair, so we'll just come over 1.5 inches. And we can get this thing flipped over and start working on the other side. Shows nice and square on the lines. That's awesome. I always like it when it comes out like that, even though it's just a slab rack. Oh, stuff's hard, it's dry. Get my screws started before I stick it on my line. There we go. It's nice and square on the lines too. And we'll get this one stuffed in. Same width. Now, if you don't have timber locks, you could just put this together with 4-inch screws. But when you're going into pine, especially pine that maybe is, let's just say, not the most perfectly sound on the outside, timber locks and ledger locks are the only way to go. I'll show you the difference in a second here when we get some out and I grab a couple of bits. We'll go around and hammer this thing tight. I will, just to, how many 4-inch screws I got left in there? I'll probably need them for something. So we'll use timber locks from here because we don't want the thing to rack a lot when we flip it over. And this isn't going to do a ton to hold it. Even with it timber locked, you know, hopefully it won't rack like this, but it certainly could. I'd have to put 2 in each one, I think, to keep it from racking. I'll see what I got sitting over there, and we'll go to the next step. So here's the difference between a timber lock and a ledger lock. Timber lock is a brand name, but it's called that in the industry, no matter which fastener company you use. That is a timber lock, and it uses, always keep a bit in the box, boys and girls, even though I have them on my belt, use a little bit like that. And then this is a ledger lock. It's called a strong drive in, or SDWS, timber screw and Simpson. And these are what they look like. These hold a lot better. However, because it's a ground bunk and they're a little more expensive, I don't want to use all of these. Plus, I don't have a lot of room on some of these to use. These hold a lot better. If you can imagine the head on softwood not digging into or just countersinking in the softwood and then being able to pull in. These hold well, really well in hardwood, but on softwood they can pull in. A lot of people use these on softwood too. That's fine. The shear strength on these is unbelievable. The holding strength on these is pretty unbelievable. But I do prefer ledger locks whenever I can use them. And you can see the difference in the shank on those. These are all left over from old jobs. So I'm going to use up those first, and then we'll move over to these because I'd rather just have these lying around. And I think this is my last 4-inch timber lock. Last of my 4-inch timber locks. I have 2 3/8, but this is the last of my 4s. So I have 11 timber locks. I'm going to use them in the oak primarily. Those are not holding well in the beam underneath it. It held good there. That one didn't hold well. That's going to get all ledger locks. I'm going to stagger them. The oak is too hard for the timber lock to seat all the way or to pull in to countersink itself. I want to pick a good area. Don't overdrive them or you'll strip them out in the wood underneath. The reason that we're using all this is we're making this thing repairable, so to speak. If something ever broke, we could. If something ever broke, we could take it off and replace it. I know I'm putting 2 in this one, but I have 1 extra timber lock and I might as well put it in the softwood. Like I said, don't overdrive them. All right, now we'll go around and we'll slam some ledger locks in here. Since my timber lock box is empty. There are probably some 5s in here. This takes a pretty unique bit. These hold really, really hard. It's probably good enough on the center. There's one in here. And all I'm doing is staggering them. Again, on these, you don't want to overdrive them because you can strip them out in the softwood underneath, especially when they come seated in the hardwood. Yeah, there are definitely some 5-inches in here too. I think 4s are fine just to keep these things from falling off, which is all they're doing really. Oh, another couple. I need 3 more. I got to put an extra one here because that timber lock did not hold. All right, we'll get her flipped over and move on to our next step. Probably gonna have to flip this with the Bobcat. It's probably gonna be pretty heavy. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna lay out kind of where my cut curves are gonna be, and then I'm gonna want to put my 4x4s across here in a place that is where I can cut right in between them. So I think I'll start with, let's just say we cut off our things right at the end here, maybe plus an inch. So I'm going to come over 15. I'm going to mark every 16 inches all the way down, minus 1 inch. So if I give myself a little clearance here to cut down on the outside, I want my next 16-inch cut to be right there. Right there. That way, if I just pick right in between my 4x4s, or I put a 4x4 an inch over from each one of those, probably even better. We'll figure it out here as we go. Oh, that one's not right. What am I doing? Right there. Right there. Right there. We'll see how this end lays out. And you could lay this out perfect. Right there. It works out. It's right on the money. It's right on the money. It's a 16-inch layout. So that works out great. I'll do the same thing on the other side. Now, if I was smart, I also would have marked my 16 so I know where my 4x4 goes, which I'm going to do that now because I'm not smart. Okay, so at my length, I need 9 4x4s at 41 inches long. I'm going to go through my 4x4 pile over here, and I'm going to pull out the most bendy ones that I can find. I also pulled a couple that were broken that were sitting over behind a pile. I'm going to cut up really kind of all my junk, and I will get them all set in place, and then we'll fasten them down. And the final step of this thing is going to be to put in some uprights. And I've got a lot of different candidates here. I don't think I want to do it with softwood, but I've got some oak over here. I got to see if I have enough oak. I think I do. And we're just going to put, I think, 3 in the back and 3 in the front. And that should cover us. If it sits next to the 4x4 here, we're going to be like, there's going to be like 5-foot spacing in between them. And if I find out that doesn't work, I'll add more, but these are going to be like 2x6s. And I think at 5-foot spacing ish, you're going to have a lot less space, say on center. You're almost going to have at the end of everything, you're almost going to have just a teeny bit more than 4-foot spacing. I think that'll work fine. Never really cutting anything at 4 feet. And what the longer stuff can hang out the end. So we'll put one on the ends and put one on every layout line all the way down. Timber lock it down or ledger lock it down. We'll see what we have for 8-inch timber locks and ledger locks. I know I've got a bunch of both, but I need to have enough. And we'll timber lock those down, and then we'll put our uprights in. All right, so I'm going to zip all these in, and then our final step will be to do at least 3 uprights on both sides. And Danny and I will probably do that after lunch. You guys will probably not even miss a beat, but let's just get them lined up. Is this the only way to do it, guys? No, it's not. This is just the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to put one 8-inch timber lock in the center of each one. It's probably going to give me the best opportunity to never hit one, because I would have to make a huge mistake to get over into the middle of one of these. So we got one more step that we have to do after lunch, which will be a second for you guys, but we're going to put uprights in. I got to pick out some lumber for that, and we will kind of guess. I'm guessing I want about that high, maybe that high. I probably should put this on the ground. Well, I don't want to put it on the ground. I'll step up in here. I don't want to put it on the ground because I want to be able to work up. So let's say that I'm standing on the ground, maybe something about that high. We'll go from the bottom of the thing. So something about that high. So we got to make them about 4 feet, which will work out fine. If I have 8-footers, that'll work out great. I think 3 across the front, 3 across the back. 2x material, so it will still leave me. Well, let me think about that for a second there, huh? Leaves me 29 in the middle. I don't want to have to cut rebates out of 4, but I think I'm going to attach them on the outside. That means my 42-inch bar will still go all the way through. The way we'll think about it after lunch. But the way this is going to work is that if I cut right next to this one, and then I cut right next to this one, and I cut right next to this one, and I cut right next to this one, I have all this room before I run into my pieces in the bottom that have nothing in them that I can run into. And I'll get 16-inch pieces all the way across. We'll think about this after lunch. Maybe I'll do 4x4s and do a rebate in them. And that'll cut down. No, it's going to cut down on that inside too much. I'd like to, well, if I did half laps and 4x4s and attach them from the outside, I could cut my 41 down to 40. It'd be be a little less than that. It'd be 4 inches less. So it'd be 37. inside. I think we'll just attach them right to the outside and use 2x6 material. I've got plenty of it lying around. And ledger locks from the side, like 5-inch ledger locks from the side. And that way, if one breaks, we just replace it. It's pretty simple. All right, we're gonna go have lunch. Okay, so what I decided to do, based on the material that I had lying around, was use 2x6s like this. 3 in the front, 3 in the back. They will be replaceable if I do break them. I'm going to zip these things in with 4-inch screws just to hold them in place, and then come back and use some ledger locks to really tie them in. I'll use my smaller 5-inch ledger locks. One thing that I should have been more careful with, I was a little cavalier about how I cut my 4x4s. I should have been a little more careful to make sure that where these are going to seat, that they were flush in the back like this one isn't. I would like to have that screw base there. I am going to sink a ledger lock into it anyway to hold from any pullback, but should have been careful to make those flush. I mean, this, obviously, it's just a slab rack. And I went about it that way, and I probably should have paid attention to that part a little bit more. But I think they stick up about the right amount based on you guys watch how I measured it. And if I don't like it, I'll take them out and I'll put in new ones. If I break them, I'll take them out and put in new ones. But I think what I'll do is I'm going to put you guys on hyperlapse. I'm going to zap all these in place. We're going to move it, and we'll throw a slab in it and we'll cut it up. We'll see how it works. Just to show you something, I was going to use these. They're oak, and I would have ended up with 6 of them. But after I trued up that one end and I pulled it off, they were all bug eaten. So they're no good. So those will be candidates to go in there and get cut up into firewood. All right, so let's give it a crack and see how it works. The only thing I could see happening would be maybe the small ones wanting, if it didn't have a bunch of slabs in it, wanting to shoot out. But I think that's easy enough mitigated. Let's just cut this one. So I think that works fine. I think it'll work great if there were a bunch of slabs in there, kind of holding each other down. Obviously, I wouldn't be doing this with that little saw. Although the little saw tends not to grab the wood really bad, so it wouldn't be a bad idea if I only had a few in there. But cut them all perfect 16s. Also, because of the way I laid it out, you could go the other way too if you wanted to. You could use the spacing. You're still going to have 16 if you go the other way. And because there's a big hole in the bottom, all the sawdust is going to fall right through it. So I'll give you a look at it. These are plenty strong enough just to dump slabs in here, you know, as long as you're not caveman about it or something like that. Everything's repairable. I'll give you a walk around and then we'll do an outro. So I've been wanting one of these for a long time, and I was always hemming and hawing about how I was going to do it. And I think this is a pretty simple design overall. So basically, from every one of these is perfect 16, but you can cut off 1 inch. So the way I have it laid out is just keep your bar off the 4x4 and you're good. You're on 16. But all these holes are exactly 16, so you can use them to measure. It's obviously heavy duty enough to load it right up and move it around. It's a little over 10 feet long, so worst case scenario, you know, I guess what you would want to do if you had 20-foot logs is just you want to cut your slab wood in half before you put it in there. You know, 16-footers will hang out like 3 feet on both sides. You just buck them into 16s and then right down the row. So in all honesty, it looks like it worked out pretty good. Didn't take very long to put together. I would guess that if I wasn't filming, maybe a couple of hours. And it would go even faster if I was using, if I wasn't trying to use up what was lying around and I could just, you know, get a chop saw out and draw it up and pre-cut everything and then just screw it together. It would go even faster than that. But this is perfect. It'll sit on top of those bunks, you know, so I can store it away if I want to in a stack, grab it when I want to, bring it out. I can go into my pile over there if I got a free day and just pull slabs down and load it right up, and then just cut them all. And like I said, it's perfect for my 42-inch bar. You know, if I load this thing right up, I can cut the whole stack at one time. And I think I'm going to do the arithmetic on this a little bit later, but I think this basically full at 10'4", and let's just say maybe a little bit was hanging out, so like maybe 12-foot slabs, but even 10 foot all the way to the top, I think is going to hold just about a cord. So that you'd be 4 feet wide, which this is just a teeny bit less than 4 feet wide, but it's longer than 8 foot. And it's just less than 4 feet high. So if you heaped it a little bit, if you loaded this thing up and you cut it all in, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 cuts with the 42-inch bar, would be a whole cord of wood. 9 cuts. Running the 42 all the way down and cutting the whole thing at one time. That's pretty impressive. Now, one thing that could become a challenge, which I really didn't think about, is if you do get the 42-inch bar, you're going to have to kind of guess where that is if you're way up in the pile. So I would suggest never loading it all the way up and just coming in, drop it in like this and going whomp, and then drop it in like this and going whomp. So we'll see. But I think for just managing the stuff that's coming off the mill and getting it into perfect little chunks like that, I think it'll work out great. And you can also do 4-footers or whatever. Because you're on 16s, you're going to have a 4-foot mark right there. That would be 48. Yeah, 16, 16, 16. 32, yeah, 48. So you have a 4-foot mark, and then 3 more is a 4-footer. So it should work out perfect for what I want it to do. And it's not super high if I got to throw something over the top. It's high, but it's not super high. For those of you who are just kind of walking there, saying it's, I would imagine it's pretty evenly split between people saying it's too low and people saying it's too high. But if I'm carrying a slab, I think I can manage this. And you know what? If it's too much of a pain in the ass, if they're too heavy, I'll just put them in the Bobcat and dump them in. Or someday maybe I'll cut these down. But I kind of like the idea, if I do the cubic feet on this, I kind of like the idea of this thing being full and being a cord. That's kind of neat to cut a whole cord in 9 cuts. So as usual, thank you guys for coming along for the ride. Really trying to use this slow time to get done with some of these things that have been nagging me that I've wanted to do. This is one of those things. The other campwood bin was one of those things. More lumber bunks is one of those things. I'd like to stay on top of those things right now and, you know, get something done every few days, keep working on firewood, get myself ready for the winter. I don't know if any of you have been looking at any of the long range models, and I don't know where you are in the country or the world. In the United States, they're calling, or actually all three models, the Canadian model, the GFS, and the European model right now, are all in agreement that the El Nino, well, there's two, El Nino and El Nino. Now, whatever, I think we're supposed to be in El Nino this year. It's super, super weak. And what that means is that if you drew a line dead through the center of the country, that's going to be the battleground for the wintertime. And the El Nino is not going to be strong enough to force that polar vortex or the northern side of that jet stream to keep it north in Canada. So what we're trending towards in north of the center of the country, especially in the north, Midwest, Northeast, Northwest, is a very super cold, they're saying, super snowy winter. And in the South, it's going to be just the opposite. They're going to have a very mild, very dry winter because of the fact that I think it's the El Nino is what we're supposed to be in, is not going to be strong enough to overcome the mid-level jet stream through the center of the country. And it's going to stay in place, and it's just going to create a train track across the country. And the north is going to be super cold and snowy here in the United States. I don't know what it's like where you guys are, but I hope it's not super cold and snowy where you're going to be. I like the cold down to about 25 degrees. I can work outside at freezing at like 32 like this. If I'm doing a building project or something, I'm completely comfortable. Comfortable being out in the snow and the wind in a hoodie. Once it gets below 25, not so much. But dry in 25 or dry in 32 is kind of my jam. And 50 degrees is like, say 48 to 58 is like my sweet spot. That's the temperature that I love, that I just love to be outside. Worked a lot of years out in Florida in construction as an erector, erecting buildings all year round. And I spent a lot of years out in the sun on concrete. And I don't like the heat very much anymore. But this is going to move us forward. We'll keep moving forward. It's a simple design. You don't have to mimic anything I do. You could use 4x4s. You could use 12x12s if you wanted. You could use 2x4s here. You could replace anything that I did with whatever you got lying around and put one of these together very simply. I just wanted it to be beefy enough to not fall apart and to be able to move around with the skid steer, especially if it's full of wood. And I want the pieces, the components, to be replaceable. And I don't want screws or metal where I'm going to hit it with the saw. And it's easily visible to me where the metal is in the center of that 4x4. So if I'm even close, you stop. You know, if you're cutting down from the top and you eyeballed it wrong and you're coming down like that, and you see you're close to the middle of the 2x4, you just stop, take all the wood off, cut the bottom wood set later. It's a good visual. And it supports everything at 16 inches. It supports the whole slab, so the slab's not caving in on itself and binding you up. It's going to shed the sawdust, so when it gets full underneath, you just move it. It's dimensions, so I know where 16 inches is, so I don't have to mark anything. I mean, you could go along and put marks on your bottom if you wanted to, but this way I don't need to. I just know I just need to miss that 4x4, and I got 16 inches. I don't really care. You know, I cut everything by eye. I don't really care if it's 16. We just use 16 as an arbitrary number, and I'm not supplying customers and stuff like that and selling cordwood, which, well, maybe I will at some point, but right now I'm not. So I'm just cutting for myself and for my campwood bins. And I don't really care if it's 16. Make sure you like, share, subscribe if you like this, if you like this kind of content. If you don't, give me a thumbs down. Throw a suggestion or a comment in there. You like the way I did it? Great. If you don't like the way I did it, great. I've seen a lot of very, very complicated builds on these things. This is not complicated. Granted, I have the fasteners lying around from the ledger locks that I put in to hold these on. The 5-inch ones were all ones I took out of a job. So they were all stained and they weren't brand new. They were ones I took out of a job and threw in my 5-inch ledger lock box. All this stuff has been byproduct of doing construction for years and years and years. And a lot of it's just sitting around, and I kind of would like to eat through some of it so that I just don't have boxes of this crap everywhere. And there's no better way to do it than building lumber bunks and doing this and building sheds and things like that. So in the near future, I think that we're going to build a bigger firewood bunker for out back out here. That, I think, is next. But that's going to do it for today. We're going to go in and get this video edited up, take a little break before we come back out and put everything away. And for Danny and myself, Pirate Solutions out.